Good morning, everybody. It's coffee hour, so we're not actually going to talk for an hour. Although about this topic, we could easily chat for an hour. So I've got my coffee. Like a lot of mornings, I've got my half gallon of water, got my protein shake. Just starting the day off very simply. I want to talk a little bit about gaps in training, what is necessary for the hands-on or physical part of self-defense training. Future time, we'll talk a little bit about the actual really important self-defense training, which is not just the physical. Filling in those gaps and my own journey through this. So I spent a solid decade training 6, 7, 8 hours a week in what is referred to as American Jiu-Jitsu in our system. There's another video I have about what we define that as, but understand it is the original Japanese art. Some of the historical stuff removed because bad guys don't use swords today. Some of the important stuff from modernity added in. So striking, kickboxing, Muay Thai, fantastic striking, Kali, stick and knife fighting. And then I started to supplement with some of my other training based upon what I saw was important. So today I have a range lesson. I am teaching a range lesson. What did it take to get there? About 15 years of training. I realized I had a gap in what I considered to be my self-defense skills. I had been taught in jiu-jitsu how to take away a handgun from somebody, provided they're dumb enough to put it really close to you. That's nice when they do that. But then it was a paperweight and a liability because I had no idea how to actually use the tool. So I went, wow, it's more than 15 years ago now. I went and got trained up on it and then realized if I really wanted to understand a thing, I believed I had to understand how to teach a thing. So I've gotten, trained under 3 different organizations and, certified in 2. One of them doesn't really do certifications, in how to be an instructor. I don't know exactly how many lessons I've logged. I prefer personally to do mostly private or semi-private. Today's 2 people at the same time. And I like that hands-on one-on-one when it comes to the firearm world because it's really about the person and the tool, as opposed to jiu-jitsu where dealing with multiple opponent engagements or a class full of energy is much more fun. Plus a lot of switching around with partners, very important, because defending against one person is not defending against another person. So really what I'm talking about here is if you know how to handle somebody physically one-on-one, no weapons, if you know how to, and I understand, I am completely understating a massive, massive, massive challenge. If you've done no training yourself, you're watching this video and you've done 0 hands-on training, trying to control another person, controlling them and damaging them is much easier than controlling them and not damaging them. If you've never done this kind of training, get to your local martial art class, ideally something hands-on, jiu-jitsu, judo, and try to control another person and realize it's not that easy to do. It's much easier after you roundhouse elbow them in the face to then control them afterwards. Slack bodies are easier to control. So physically, the physicality of unarmed, right? Sticks and knives, impact weapons, and pokey things. These are very, very common in today's self-defense world. And firearms, they're just a reality of what we deal with out there. And I realized I had to face the mirror and be like, you have a gap in your training. You do not know how to handle firearms. You do not know how to, on both sides of the equation, how to make them safe, how to make them utilitarian in order to use them offensively. And I think that's a misstep if you're trying or claiming to teach anything to do with self-defense. If you don't have capability in those 3 weapon platforms, you're not teaching self-defense. You are incapable of teaching the entire topic of self-defense. Sorry, just my opinion after almost 30 years of doing this. Just because you're ignorant willingly of a very important topic. Now, you may not like firearms, maybe you don't like people carrying knives. I don't care. It's reality. These are what's out there. These are what we have to deal with, okay? So I take this realization that I found this training gap and I went looking around like, okay, so what's quality in terms of the firearm world? I don't, nothing against the gun games guys, the IDPA and the IPSC guys and all those stuff. Like, that's fine. Grappling games are fun too. I get it. It just wasn't something that interested me. I wanted to make sure I was working on self-defense with a firearm. So I found this organization, this guy named Rob Pincus. Turned out a mutual contact knew him, put me in touch with him. He had a local instructor named Matt, and I proceeded to reach out to Matt, and we did 2 to 4 hours of personal instruction every Friday for months. And I remember at one point he said to me, he goes, "Nobody does this. Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Well, I claim to teach self-defense, and I realized that like I don't know how to do this, and I have to fill in this gap." Um, and that has led to many great connections and lessons for me, taking some of those lessons and no, not using live fire in a martial arts school, but taking the lessons and the principles back and being able to repackage some of what we teach. So when you go to fill in a training gap, congratulations. The odds are, you think about like how the muscle repairs its body, right? You tear the muscle and then your body goes and puts in more muscle and you actually end up with extra. Very much so when you go to fill in a training gap, let's pretend you've never worked with knives. Most likely, if you go to train with 3 or 4 really reputable people who work with knife work, you're going to improve your other stuff. So my jujitsu got better. And again, we use jujitsu to mean hand, stick, knife, hands, all those things. My jujitsu got better because of my expanding into the firearms world and expanding and teaching and learning there. And, you know, when we look at the industry, try to be careful about how I say this, um, the industry teaches sport grappling and puts self-defense on the wall because the average person has literally no clue what is involved in self-defense. The amount of parents that people that I talk to in my academy, usually parents who have never been punched, never thrown a punch, never been thrown up against a wall, choked, hit with a stick, really even threatened. It's that number's getting bigger because our society ultimately is actually getting safer, just statistically. Um, and I live in a pretty safe place. People come in and they're all like, they get worked up about self-defense, and I'm here to teach them self-defense, but I also like to couch them with, guys, you literally live in the safest place in the safest time in all of human history. So relax a little bit. I understand social media has brought these big scary things to our faces, and yes, bad stuff can happen anywhere, anytime, but on a percentage basis, you're doing pretty well. Okay. So if you are an instructor and self-defense is a thing that you claim to teach, and you are not squared away with how to control somebody, how to disable somebody physically hands-on, how to deal with somebody with an edged weapon, I understand that that is an absolute soup sandwich of a situation. No, I'm not at all claiming that there's any clean and easy way to do that. That would be a ridiculous statement. Impact weapons are also very difficult, not as difficult as edge weapons in tight and close. I personally believe, based on a lot of training, that does not diminish their capability. I would just rather try to stop somebody holding a stick or a blunt object than somebody holding a knife. And then firearms, from a hands-on capability, if you train again and you talk about this stuff and you don't actually train this stuff and are not capable of explaining it, that's problematic, right? That's a very big gap. Likewise, the art, the act, the practice of running away. I don't like running, but we do practice and we build into our training a lot of escape work, because in self-defense world, escaping is a common theme, often mentioned. Oh, run away if you can, and almost never practiced. And we have this past January, it's February now, but this past January, we spent an entire month of dealing with a swarm mob type situation. We call it the endure month because in some cases the only thing you can do is endure that situation and take a beating or take hits as you try to effect an escape. Barring some John Wick fantasy world, you're not dropping 15 people by yourself. Yes, there's going to be the guys in the comments who are like, well, me and my AR. Yeah, I know. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. That's why we train with things that go pew pew. But I'm just talking realistically. You're out in public and stuff goes sideways. We see these protests happen and things get heated quickly. And you're not, you haven't slung your AR on your back of your shoulder going down to get coffee at Starbucks. realistically, escape is the only realistic option, and how to manage taking a beating is the other option. I guess in theory, as one friend likes to say, you could try to take as many of them with you, but I appreciate the bravado. It's also semi-limited in efficacy. So what do we do as an industry? Nothing. I can't change the industry. That's not a realistic statement. I put these videos out in the hopes that people pay attention to them and watch, and I don't actually honestly put out a ton of self-defense videos. I think the internet is overly full with that stuff, and it's really hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. When it gets to hands-on training, respectfully, there's not a damned thing that I can put into a video that is going to actually make you better as an individual. It just doesn't exist. You have to. My analogy in this one has always been, if I take an hour and I explain to you, how to swim, the backstroke and the breaststroke and the doggy paddle. If I explain that to you and you never get into a pool, like a calm water pool by yourself, you don't know how to swim. And then the heck with the pool, we take you into a surf environment at the beach, like heavy waves coming in, and you're trying to swim under those situations and those circumstances. That's going to be far, far, far more difficult, and definitely a thing that you have to learn how to deal with and manage if you want to know how to swim for safety and self-defense, survival. For self-defense purposes, the same. If you're not dealing with somebody under pressure, if you're not dealing with somebody, with fairly good intent trying to poke holes in you, one of the training things we use, we have every variation of a knife. And by that I mean wood, rubber, really well designed aluminum ones that are generally safe. They're still metal, so they take bruise. And then I was gifted many years ago by my students a shock knife, and the shock knife, I actually think it's less dangerous in realistic terms than the aluminum one. But it's really scary and it's really motivational, because it arcs and it zaps and it makes terrible noises. And if it touches you, it kind of feels. My analogy is like you feel like the hair is getting pulled out of your arm. So, but it really does change how people move. And so you're pressure testing, right? Random work. I know there's randori, but a lot of randori work in your judo and grappling arts, newaza, BJJ, whatever you want to use there, you have a resisting opponent, but you don't have somebody that's actually trying to end you. How can you do that safely? It's bumpy. You can't. You have to do it with a modicum of control, a bit of an understanding of, like, you spend enough years training, you take hits. I have been concussed. It happens. I have been bruised and banged up and taken months to recover. So I know what it's like, as a general statement, to get hit and have a banged up rib, or your neck is so jacked up you can't look right. It all recovers over time, guys. We train as intelligently and safely as we can to those goals, but with the understanding that this is inherently a bumpy thing. But in all fairness, I'm going to curse myself here, but in almost 2 decades of running my academy, I know more people, adult males, it's always dudes, who have been badly messed up skiing in the last 10, 15 years. And I mean, med flighted, major surgeries, hobbling injuries. I actually know more of those than people that have been injured on our mats. So, and that's a much smaller population overall. So understand, it doesn't matter what you do, everything carries some sort of inherent risk with it. The risk of inactivity, to me, is actually one of the scariest ones. I have family members that their inactivity is Olympic level. They're Olympic level inactive. And I will tell you, in helping to manage healthcare for some of them, one of them in particular, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. The damage that does is way worse than the damage of training and getting bruised and banged up and having to take a week or 2 weeks to recover from it. So, what do they say? Choose your hard. Yeah, it's hard getting on a mat and getting bumpy and bruisey and throwing people around and kind of getting over that psychological barrier there. It's personally much harder laying in a bed watching television and feeling your body just kind of melt from underneath you. So, Sorry, morbid topic there, but it's coffee. It's the idea is ramblings of sorts. So I'll take a little sip and refocus my brain. Got my double espresso. Yes, I have my Deadpool cup. Wait, hold on. Sorry, the dishwasher took off part of it before today, but it's my Deadpool and Wolverine cup given to me by my lovely girlfriend. So, quick switch of topics. Last week, I officially opened up, haven't done anything with it, but officially opened up this school platform, SKOOL. Current title, it's a work in progress. It may change, it may not change. The current name is the Dojo Owner Leadership Playbook. It is not, that does not mean this is just for dojo owners. I am a dojo owner. Maybe it should be Sensei Leadership Playbook. I don't know. Feedback, guys. I need feedback. But I'm really thinking that this is for people who their focus is in the leadership type gaining world. That could be young adults. I know my leadership students are going to be in this group. I have told them how to have to behave, which is always a little scary for 13-year-olds to interact with adults. But I think they have good experience and good data, and I would like to have them, participate. Especially for some of the parents that are out there, or some of the coaches that are out there, some of the school owners that are out there. And as this builds, I'm going to be like putting a weekly video in there that is just about leadership. In particular, for those who are curious, we have a leadership topic that we talk about every week in our Tuesday leadership class. And I'm going to do a quick video about that week's topic as much as I can. I will also incorporate some segments or some snippets from the class. In particular, last Tuesday, we had a great lesson. One of my coaches, Lara, she asked if we could do a refresher on how to run our Little Ninjas classes. That's our 4 to 6-year-olds. And Lara took the reins. Collaborative effort. She had some of the other coaches help her, but she took the reins for a solid 25, almost 30 minutes and refreshed the rest of the team on how to. Lara's particularly, she loves teaching the ninjas class, and she's very good at it, very, very good at it. And, could I do that? Yes. Have I done it many times? Yes. Do I vastly enjoy the fact that I now have a coach who wanted to take the reins and teach this lesson to her peers instead of me? It's fantastic. It's one of the most cool things in my life because flat out, she did a great job. She hit the right high notes, helped some of the younger students. We have 10-year-olds in this class. Laura's 16. So help some of the youngers understand what they're going to be getting into in the future when they are maybe leading a ninjas class 4, 5, 6 years from now. And that is, I have found many times it's important for other voices to say the same words. I have a funny story. I'm going to call out one of my black belts here. A friend was here teaching. He was here for something else, and he taught a judo class. He's a judo instructor. And I think it was an ogoshi or a hip throw. And he goes, no, you have to drop low and use your hips more. And she goes, oh, hips. And I burst out laughing. I was within earshot, and I burst out laughing because we literally in jiu-jitsu, would I say, all right, guys, what's the answer? And the answer, the magic answer is it's almost always hips. Like 93% of the time, the answer is hips. And she has said this many times. But it was somebody else's voice, right? It was a different voice. Despite the fact this person had been training for 8 or 9 years or whatever it had been at that time, a different voice saying the same words can anchor. So if you are an instructor, parent, right? Teacher, coach, whatever it is, how many times have I had parents tell me like, man, I talk to him or her about this stuff at home and they don't listen to me. I'm like, yeah, it's a different voice, right? Obviously, complacency, contempt, all that kind of stuff, comfort and contempt, these go together. But it's also just a different voice saying it in a slightly different fashion, and that can land differently for the individual. So anyway, school community officially alive. Dojo Owner Leadership Playbook. If you'd like a link for it, let me know. I think you can search it, but it's brand new, so it might not be searchable yet. But we're gonna be working on building this and see where it goes. I'll be honest with you, I've got some ideas, especially targeted towards school owners. I have what I, without ego, will call a pretty successful leadership program. We have 60 of our kids and junior students in this program at some level. And that is just one of the best learning opportunities for young people beyond just the physicality of martial arts. And I know a lot of people who don't have anything like this, and I would like to see them work on growing this. And this is going to be my way of trying to help do that. And we'll see where that takes us. Okay. So it is Super Bowl Sunday, so I have to do the obligatory Go Pats. I kind of fell out of watching sports in the last couple of years, but I will be watching the Super Bowl. I have watched the last couple of games. And I'll be honest with you, mostly because it's nostalgic, because the current coach of the Patriots, Mike Vrabel, was one of my favorite players back in the day when he was playing for the Patriots. So go Pats. I hope you guys have a great week. I will be putting a video tomorrow morning up in the leadership group. And sorry, well, we'll call it the leadership playbook group. Oh, leadership playbook group. Okay, maybe we'll do that. But I'd like your feedback, okay? So have a great one, guys. Go Pats. Talk to you soon.